Hey, how's your fantasy team? It's a question we ask, but do we really care about the answer? And what about in life? How often do we ask people, how you doing? How are things going? And do we really care about their answer? Let's unpack it. It's the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast. Oh, yeah, awesome weekend. I went 4-1. I'm loving life, baby. It was my birthday. I got a nice birthday weekend. It was awesome. So we are talking fantasy today, faith and life. I hope you are doing well. I'm Bryce Johnson with Trip Smith, pastor at Hope Community Church, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while you play fantasy football with purpose. As we provide fantasy advice, we won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. We are coming to you live here at 2:45 from the Unpacking It Ministry studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. Be sure to sign up for Fantasy Football Fellowship on our website, fantasyfootballfellowship.com. We've got the latest breakout dropping today at 5 o'clock Eastern. And this week's topic is all about the question, how is your fantasy team? And so we will do that breakout here on the show. We'll talk about it, and then you can read about it and then discuss with your league. And so make sure you go to fantasyfootballfellowship.com for that. As we take fantasy concepts, relate them to the Bible, relate them to life. And so we hope that will be an encouraging conversation today. And so also on the show, we've got plenty of week 4 reactions. We got to talk about Monday Night Football. We'll do some bandwagon riding. We'll talk waiver wire. And who do we get? Who do we leave on the waiver wire? And then also we'll ask the question, who is that? And then I got to do what's boiling Bryce in a few minutes as well. So we have got a lot to get to, and we'll do fantasy shenanigans, some bounce back players. And it's the first week of buys. And so hopefully you've prepared correctly. I did go pick up Trevor Lawrence as my backup to fill in this week. So I did do it. I went back to the well with Jacksonville. So we got to talk about a weird game for them. They're like kind of better, but still not really. So what do we do with that? But let me begin. Before I even say hello to Trip, before I start yelling at him, let me just get this off my chest as we start things off. All right, here we go. Little what's boiling Bryce.
Boiling Bryce.
All right, so I had a great fantasy weekend. I went 4-1 in 5 of my leagues. And so that's a great weekend. You don't always get those weeks. Last night, Jared Goff is catching passes for touchdowns. And so it's like, whoa, here we go. Jared Goff. My patience has come through. And I started him all 4 weeks, but it took till week 4 until things finally clicked for him. Kenneth Walker, back from injury. Awesome. Got into the end zone 3 times. However, I wanted the 5-0 weekend, right? You got to get the 5-0. And guess what? The one loss was in the Unpacking It League with some of you who are listeners, and I lost to the intern, Gage, by 0.02. Are you kidding me? 0.02 in fantasy? How's that even possible? And so not only am I mad that I lost by 0.02, but I'm mad at myself because the computers, the experts, they told me to start George Pickens over Khalil Shakir. But sometimes I like to be a little too smart for my own good. And I decided to leave Shakir in there. And then I also had James Cook in that lineup as well. And guess what? The Buffalo Bills, they were still celebrating like they won a Super Bowl because they dominated Jacksonville the other night. What night was that? Was that a Monday night game? Whenever that game was, a Thursday night, whenever they beat Jacksonville, we were still celebrating that. And James Cook forgot to show up. Josh Allen forgot to show up. And Khalil Shakir did not do enough for me to score 0.02 more points. And so I lost to intern Gage. And so congratulations to him. He's a football player at ECU. So App State did beat ECU so that's real life. So we'll count that. So I still get the win, but I did not get the fantasy win. And that's what's boiling Bryce this week. Hello, Trip. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. Sorry for your tough weekend. Well, here's the thing. I'm not sorry. First of all, happy belated birthday. Second of all, 4-1. That's great, man. Some of us aren't even sniffing 4-1 across our collective fantasy teams this season. I just feel like I'm 500 every week. So I guess I don't have that much sympathy for you. But the 5-0 would have been fun for your birthday weekend. So sorry that happened.
0.02. That's as close as it gets.
It sounds like you broke your own rule of not starting two players on the same team, man. Yeah, remember that for the future.
I'm hitting the microphone. You're exactly right.
I win against your own lesson there. Yeah.
Core principle. Core principle. It was my mistake for drafting both of them to put myself even in that situation. And again, I'm still loving life. Whenever they played Jacksonville, I don't remember when that was, but whenever that was, we thought they were the Super Bowl champs after that. And that was kind of how the weekend went a little bit, because we were all excited about the Jets after their big win, and then they lose to Denver. And, we're all excited about the Saints after 2 weeks, and now they stink the last 2 weeks. Still some fantasy we were concerned about the Bengals. They beat our Panthers. They looked pretty good on offense, at least. I've got to talk about a running back in just a little bit, but let's talk fantasy shenanigans. And we'll start with Monday Night Football, because once again, we got the doubleheader, which I absolutely love, because last night, as bad as that first game was, the second game was that much better. So we could move on. We didn't have to worry about the Dolphins and Titans, and that it was just dreadful. And then all of a sudden, we see score after score, touchdown after touchdown, big play after big play. All the guys that I needed in that lineup, or from Seattle and Detroit, were scoring. It was great. So I love Monday Night Football. But Kenneth Walker, huge bounce back game for him. DK Metcalf, other than the drop, he continues to be, an elite wide receiver. And then even he had a chance for a touchdown that I don't think they gave that to him. So there were some missed opportunities there as well. And then Jared Goff, real deal. What was your takeaway from Monday night? And I know we talked Dolphins last week. It's dreadful. It's dreadful for them.
Yeah, I mean, talk about two totally different games on two totally different ends of the spectrum. The late game, you got to watch two competent quarterbacks just absolutely dealing to their great skill players. And the early game, the Miami-Tennessee game, was just ugly to watch. I mean, it is life in the QB wasteland for most of those teams. And frankly, Will Levis has looked pretty bad this season. And so when he went out with injury, and I think Mason Rudolph completed his first 3 passes, he looked pretty good for the first handful of passes. And you're like, okay, maybe Tennessee will actually be better with this guy. And then he's the same old Mason Rudolph, just completed 11 passes for 85 yards or something like that. And with Miami, I continue to believe that Miami will have a new quarterback on their roster by the end of this week. I mean, I just think the way that team is built, the age that Tyreek is, and actually their 2 top running backs are both older in age as well. They got to figure out somebody who can distribute the ball to those players competently. And I don't know if it's going to be Tannehill, or I'd love for them to go out and make a trade that benefits both them and the Dallas Cowboys for Trey Lance or something like that. Get somebody in there that you can feel excited about. But man, it's rough right now for both of those teams. And if you own skill players on either of those teams, you're in a tough position.
But Trey Lance is going to be your
look, man.
The guy Cowboys, that comes through for you.
The Cowboys are struggling this year, especially on defense. And now Micah Parsons and Lawrence, both of the 2 key defenders are out for multiple weeks. Go trade Trey Lance.
But what is he going to do?
Dude, Trey Lance is better than, Trey Lance is better than Tim Doyle and Tyler Huntley. And Tua's not. I don't think Tua's playing this season, man. You got to give somebody that your team can feel excited about, that your fans can feel excited about. I don't think it's going to happen, to be clear, but it's just like there are quarterbacks out there that they got to get somebody.
Who still has to have he's got the talent. There's no question. It's Carson Wentz.
Well, isn't Wentz on?
He's Kansas City.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think the Chiefs would get rid of him, because you want him. Because I think even if Mahomes went down, like if he had to fill in for a half or a game, I think there's enough talent there. Well, we'll talk about the injury, of course, to Rice, but Wentz has to stay there. So you have to look across for backups in the league. But who's willing to get rid of their backup? That's the problem. Right. So it had to be someone off the street like Ryan Tannehill. But yeah, you're right. With Miami, you watch it.
It's not really worth talking about right now.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. Yeah, it's only going to make us boil a little bit more, because Devon Achane was a letdown last night as well. But Tony Pollard looked good. Nice bounce back game for him. So a lot of good players. You have to look beyond kind of the struggles of Miami to find those guys. All right, other bounce back players this week, DeAndre Swift. I was ready to move on from Roschon Johnson. Last week on the waiver wire, I tried to get him. I only got him in one league. I was disappointed that I did not get him in the other leagues. But I'm hoping that maybe he makes it back into the waiver wire because I still like Roschon. And I think you do too. But Swift did have a nice big game. But I'm still not all the way back on the bandwagon for Swift. Mike Evans had a bounce back game. And then we got to talk Travis Kelce too. A good game for him. Not an unbelievable Travis Kelce game, but a very solid game. And now with Rashee Rice going out, how long we still are waiting on that final date for what the situation is. But it looks, we don't know what to make of the Chiefs because they're 4-0. Mahomes isn't playing as good as we know he's capable of. But you think at some point he's going to turn it around, but it's going to have to be with a rotation at running back, a rotation at wide receiver, and probably a more of a lean in. Hey guys, we got to get the ball to Kelce. This is who we trust. This is our guy. And so I think fantasy managers will finally reap some of the benefits. Even though last week we were questioning Kelce, I think at this point he's got to be the guy. That Mahomes and him have to get going in order for this whole offense to work. That's what it's going to take. And I think they'll figure it out and in some ways force it a little bit just to get it really rocking and rolling again. So any other bounce back performances or other fantasy shenanigans from the weekend?
I mean, there's so many fantasy shenanigans. The Vikings just continue to be so fun to watch. And Sam Darnold, I mean, what if Sam Darnold just is the guy that he was drafted to be all those years ago? And he's been on this long and painful journey with Adam Gase and the Panthers. And I mean, the Vikings, maybe they just are this good. Justin Jefferson is elite. Imagine Sam Darnold getting to throw to that guy after everything that he's been through in the NFL.
Jordan Addison bounced back after injury. Looked good.
I mean, imagine all the injuries before the season saying a statement like the Vikings are going to the playoffs. The Vikings might make a push in the playoffs. You know, at some point I expect Sam Darnold to return to earth a little bit, but what if he just is the guy that he was drafted to be all of those years ago? You know,
it's fair. No, and I've been way wrong. And so we'll do accountability and confession in a little bit, but I'll just get in on early on that. But yeah, I was wrong about the Vikings. However, they almost blew that game because the Packers were awesome.
Came storming back. Yeah, it was a fun game, and you feel good. Jordan Love looked great in the second half. He looked like his old kind of self in the second half. And so, yeah, you feel good if you're a fan of either of those teams, I think. I
still think Detroit is the team in the NFC, but to beat. But I think Green Bay, from a fantasy standpoint, you want players. Get any of them. I've been telling you about Emmanuel Wilson. I'm still in on him as a backup running back. Get him before he truly goes off. And then, I hate to say it, but I missed on Tavian Wicks. I saw him on the waiver wire this week, and I blew past him. And what a miss that is, because now I'm going to go spend a ton of fob dollars to go get Wicks if I can.
Yeah.
Because he is good. I was reading all about him today. All of the stats, if you're a stat guy, they all point to Wicks and the rise that he's on for Green Bay. I like Romeo Doubs, but he's just your solid guy. He's not the high level, the ceiling, the true, truly talented guy that Wicks can be. And then Jaden Reed is awesome. So you drafted him, you're keeping him, you love him. He's got some injury concerns always with him. But he's awesome. So the performance for all these guys, I mean, everyone was in double figures. I mean, Reed, 31 points. Jordan Love, what do you have? 36 points. Wicks, 27 points. Tyler Kraft. Who is it?
Tucker Kraft.
Tucker Kraft, 19 points for him. So it's just a tight end all the way around. So you want Packers players. He's probably a free agent. You can probably pick up Kraft on many of your waiver wires. So get him as well. So those were the shenanigans from the weekend. I was surprised that Jaden Daniels followed up his monster performance with another monster performance. So I got to give him some love.
He looks legit, man. He looks like he's going to be very good. Cliff Kingsbury wanting to put up 40 points on his former team. I mean, maybe there's fun. A little bit of payback there as well. But one other shenanigan worth mentioning is all this drama around Davante Adams that has bubbled up again, and his coach liking a post on Instagram about him potentially being traded. So I got my news feed over here just to see if Davante is traded before the end of the show. We can break that news, but I think that he is going to end up somewhere else probably by the end of the week.
So trades are always fun, but they always make me nervous about the guys that I have on my team that take a hit once someone gets traded there. So I don't know where he's going to go or but that's kind of my fear. We talked a couple weeks ago about fantasy fear. That's one of my fears, is that now all of a sudden Adams goes somewhere where I like the guy and he's kind of maybe rising as the go-to guy, but that team goes, no, we're going to add Adams to the mix.
Right. Yep. It always happens to a good team that's looking to add one more receiver. You're right. Yep. That could definitely, he could cannibalize somebody else a little bit this week.
If he goes to the Jets,
I would hate that.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Wilson,
that would make sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Would they trade Wilson for him?
Ooh,
probably not.
no.
I don't think they would. I think that seems outrageous. But
there's no way they can't do that.
He's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start, but you told me before the show not to panic with Garrett Wilson. So you're still in on Wilson. But that was an ugly game for them in the rain. They lose to the Broncos. That was a weird one. Talk about shenanigans. That was one for sure. All right. So we're going to get into our breakout. And so I want to ask the question, because this is a question that we hear often. How's your fantasy team? Right? We know that this time of year, especially with, buddies and people in the neighborhood, people at work that play fantasy football. The question is, hey, how's your fantasy team? Hey, how'd your fantasy team do last night? Hey, how's the fantasy season going? Right? This is just conversation that we have, and we love it, right? We love talking fantasy. But here's an honest take that maybe nobody actually admits to, but nobody wants to hear about your fantasy team. When we might ask the question, hey, how's your fantasy team? But do we actually care about the answer? Once we start hearing you go on and on, I had to listen to Aaron, my producer, go on and on about his fantasy team. And do I really care? Probably not, as I knock over things in the studio. Maybe Aaron's knocking these things over. But that's the thing. We like to talk about our own team. We like to talk about the injuries that are affecting us. We want to talk about how close we were to win, or, I almost picked that guy up on the waiver. And so here at Fantasy Football Fellowship, we want to have conversations about fantasy football. And we hope that you are meeting as a league throughout the season to talk fantasy football. And yeah, you try to give everybody a chance to talk about their team. But when it really comes down to it, do we really listen? Do we really care? Like, hey, okay, I got it. You're looking for a tight end. You got 0 points out of Kyle Pitts. I get it. But do we really care? And so the more important question for us today, as we parallel this to our own lives, how often do we ask the question, hey, how are you doing? Hey, what's going on in life? Hey, what's the latest? And do we actually listen to the answer? And not only do we listen, do we actually care what someone is telling us? And are we the type of people that others are willing to actually tell us what's really going on because they trust us and they know that we genuinely care? And care is part of it. And I'll take a step further to use the word compassion. Do we have compassion for other people? Now, when it comes to fantasy and someone tells us, hey, yeah, gosh, I've got Tyreek Hill on my team. And you go, yeah, me too. There's a level of empathy and you relate. You go, yeah, okay, I can feel your pain. Or, oh, man, I'm still dealing with the Cooper Kupp injury. Yeah, I know, me too. And Isaiah Pacheco's out. Yeah, me too. So you go back and forth and you relate and all that kind of thing. But in life, when someone says, hey, I'm going through this. Hey, I'm struggling with my marriage. Hey, things at work are stressful and I'm losing sleep over it. And man, my health and the health of my parents or the health of my kids or you're going through that. Are we so, preoccupied with our own team, so to speak, that we don't listen to other people when they're actually telling us how they're really doing? And so it may be a hollow question. Hey, how's your fantasy team? And we're all guilty of it because we all just like to talk about our own fantasy team. But in life, especially as followers of Jesus, we got to start listening. When we say, hey, how are you doing? How's life? What's going on? We got to listen with a genuine concern and compassion, and then come alongside people when they do share that life is going, it's tough. They're in a tough spot. And so let me pause there, Trip, and get your initial thoughts on this.
Yeah, I love this topic. I mean, you're right. It's funny because when I ask people about their fantasy teams or when I share what's going on with mine, I don't really care about the tactics of fantasy and the start set decisions that they made, how many points they're scored. But when they get to the emotional part, man, I'm in a low place. Man, this weekend hurt. Man, this weekend was my birthday and I had a great weekend. I love hearing that and sharing that with other people. And I think that's a little hint for us that we're all kind of looking for these little relational access points where we get a better idea of what's going on really in someone's heart and in their sort of emotional state. And for me, I mean, I heard a quote many years ago. Somebody said that in sort of our hyper distracted world that we live in today, that attention is one of the purest and most beautiful acts of love that you can give to someone else, to put your undivided attention on someone, to ask, how are you doing? and really listen to the answer. Man, what a great way to love and to care for people. I often visualize myself as kind of a disco ball where the light of God's love and attention towards me is bouncing off in 1,000 different directions and I'm distracted in 100 different ways. When you read the stories of Jesus in the gospel, he was like a spotlight, right? He would be in a crowd of people, and then somebody who would come up and who would be an outcast or a forgotten person in society would come up and he would give them his undivided attention. How many places in the gospel does it says Jesus looked at her? Jesus looked at him. He gave his attention, he listened, and he asked good questions. And I want to be more like Jesus in that, and being able to focus on people and hear what they say and give them my love by listening to how they answer that "how are you doing" question. So great topic. I love this one, man.
That's a great illustration. That's memorable. Disco ball versus the
I'm
spotlight.
just a distracted disco ball that's bouncing all over the place. And Jesus was just a warming beam of attention and love. And I want him to make my heart more like that towards other people.
That's cool, man. Gosh, when I turn on my disco ball in my basement, I will think of that.
Think of that.
So, so that's good. I just got one, a little mini one for me.
Disco balls are great.
Girls,
I'm not
man.
trashing disco balls by any means. They're a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's fun, man. It goes with the music, with the beat.
Oh, that's fun.
It's sweet. It's sweet. It's
It's
not a true disco ball, but it's a cheap knockoff. But anyway, but here's the scripture. We got a couple different verses to share today. So Philippians 2:3-4 in the Amplified version says, "Do nothing from selfish or empty conceit, through factional motives or strife, but with an attitude of humility, being neither arrogant nor self-righteous, regard others as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others." And so to me, we live that out when we go, "Hey, how are you doing?" And we listen. And we're actually interested in what is being communicated with words, but also even with discernment and the Holy Spirit speaking to us and making us alert and aware of what actually is being communicated. Maybe nonverbal cues, or we know the follow-up question to ask too, not just how you're doing, but then, whoa, wait, you mentioned that. What does that really mean? And now all of a sudden we start to unpack, uncover, discover what actually is happening in people's lives. And then we have a choice to make. Once we hear okay, man, this person's struggling. Then we choose to have compassion, walk alongside of them in the journey, continue to check in on them. And so it's not just a one hollow, "how you doing?" but then a week later, following up. How often do we do that? Or do we feel like, man, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to, burden them by asking how they're doing. But that's what we got to do. We got to come alongside people and put their challenges ahead of our own and serve them and love them well. And so the other verse, Colossians 3:12 says, "Since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." And then 1 John 3:16-18. "We know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. If someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need, but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions." And right now, we're coming to you from Charlotte, and our friends and neighbors and family members are up in the mountains in a really bad spot. Their houses are destroyed. The towns are destroyed. Trees are down. Power's out. No water, no food. Other needs are and so we've got that. How do we come alongside these people? How do we show compassion? How do we give? How do we serve? What are we going to do? And so we've got to ask God, okay, when someone tells us what's going on, or we find out that someone's struggling, we have a chance to respond. And we ask God, okay, God, how can I be a part of helping here and coming alongside this person, and then being obedient to actually do what God's asking us to do in those situations. And so again, there's different layers to it. There's different situations that require certain needs and certain responses from us as friends and people that care about other people. But we have to be willing to listen and be aware. How's your fantasy team? All right, who cares? How are you doing? What's really going on? And how can I help? And do we really care about that question? And then I'll share this verse too, Galatians 6:2. "Carry one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the requirements of the law of Christ. That is the law of Christian love." And so let's be like Jesus. He teaches us to be, moved with compassion. He demonstrates this. There's so many verses about he was moved with compassion. And he demonstrates humility. He served others. and he cares deeply about us and always has. So any final thoughts from you, Trip?
I just love the logic of that 1 John 3 verse that you read, Bryce. I mean, I think all of us have some notion, to care for other people, to pay attention to them, to love them, and to practically serve them is something that I should be doing. But if I'm honest, I'm like, so often I'm thinking so much about me that I'm so distracted. I just don't really care about other people the way that I should. And in that moment, if you say, okay, I just got to do better to care more about other people, it doesn't really work. That's not a sustainable solution. If you go to Jesus, if you look at Jesus, look how he cared for me. Look what he gave up to make me his own. He gave his very life. Then that is what starts to warm my heart and motivate me to care for others. And so that verse about this is how we know what love is, because Jesus gave his life for us. We also ought to give up our lives for brothers and sisters. There's a logical order there. And so if you're out there and you're like, I don't know where to start, look at Jesus and then watch him invite you on really the adventure of being creative about how to love people around you. It really is. It's a creative process to get creative and practical about how to care for your neighbors, care for people in Western North Carolina, care for people that you know are hurting. It's a fun way to live your life, to see Jesus as inviting you into that adventure with him.
Amen. I love it. And I got to admit, sometimes I don't have the capacity, or buy the lie that I don't have the capacity to care. I go, I just got too much on. I got too much on my plate. I got too much going on. I can't be there for that person right now. And I think the way that God really works is that when we start pouring into other people and we start putting other people ahead of ourselves, whatever we're dealing with it gets put into perspective. We gain a new strength. We gain kind of the energy that we feel like we're lacking to actually help someone. We actually get that energy back, and that kind of the blessing and that kind of thing. So that's a challenge to me and other people that use the excuse of, I'm too busy, or I got my own problems going on. No. Let's be there for other people. Let's put them first and see how God moves in that, even in our own circumstances. We don't do it because of that, but that's an amazing kind of fruit or benefit or result.
It's a symptom of serving others, is that he pours more into you. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Absolutely. So, all right, there you go. That's this week's topic. How's your fantasy team? So when you ask that question,
my fantasy team is not doing well, right? So let's talk about something else.
No, what's going on? All right. So, and then the other verse too is, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. And so that's part of this as well. So we are rejoicing with my 4-1 week that I had. A little bit of a struggle there for Trip this week, but we are in this together. It is a long season. We are all trying to prepare our teams for the playoff run, the fantasy playoff run, to ultimately win championships. So right now, it's being willing to, fix the roster, be patient with certain players, ride the waves of certain matchups. We were talking earlier, certain players on defense, like they shut down receivers. You were talking about Surtain with Denver. He's going to shut guys down. And when you go up against the Steelers, even though that turned out to be a little bit more scoring than we anticipated, but certain games we just have to realize, all right, my player's fine. Let's not overreact either. But let's do a little accountability and confession today as we acknowledge some of the players that we've been wrong about, or things that we've mentioned here on the show that we missed on. But then also some of the things that we got right, and we'll keep kind of hammering home on some of those takes as well. But we do need to talk about the Colts. So the Colts got the win, and I have been very hesitant with Anthony Richardson going into the season, and then especially after the first few weeks, and wondering about the receiver situation. And it's like, man, I'm excited Josh Downs is back, because I saw what he did last year. He was good, but he was really good with Gardner Minshew. Minshew's not there anymore. Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman have no connection. We haven't seen that at all. Right. If Richardson's been under center or in shotgun, him and Pittman have not clicked. And then what happens on Sunday? Richardson goes down. You don't want him injured. You hope he gets better. But from a fantasy perspective, Joe Flacco comes in. All of a sudden, the passing attack looked a lot better. Josh Downs comes back from injury. He looked good. Pittman had the best game of his season. 6 catches, 113 yards. So what do you make now of this situation with Richardson and Flacco and the receivers there?
I had Pittman on my bench. And
confession there.
Yeah, I had Pittman on my bench, and I think that was the right decision based on what has happened the last few weeks there. It sounds like Richardson's injury is a hip pointer that's short term. That's the last I read, at least. There is no question in my mind that for the next 4 weeks, potentially to the end of this season, it's better for all of the pass catchers in Indianapolis if Joe Flacco is starting than if Anthony Richardson is starting. I will say that Richardson has been still hyper targeting Pittman, and he had a few passes at the beginning of that game to Pittman where they looked good. They were mid-range passes where he connected with Pittman. So I'm still optimistic that over the course of a full season, Richardson can develop into a semi-competent passer. The problem is that he can't stay on the field long enough to kind of get that rhythm and get that development that he needs. So if Flacco is starting next week, I'm starting Pittman, no question. If Richardson's back on the field, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I think Richardson will be back sooner than later. So,
man, the Browns apparently didn't even offer Flacco a contract. I mean, how silly are the Browns? They're paying for it. Because not that I don't know if they would bench Watson for Flacco, but maybe you like to at least have that option. So the Colts went out and got a legit. You talk about the Dolphins; they'd love to have Joe Flacco right now. So the Colts understood. Oh wow, we got Anthony Richardson. We got some injury concerns. Let's get a legitimate Super Bowl winning quarterback on our team. It makes sense.
I don't know how, if you're the Miami Dolphins, you don't have a competent backup. I don't know if you're one of these guys who's in his late 30s, has a good career, but it's mostly behind him. Why are you playing for a team like the Carolina Panthers or the Indianapolis Colts when you could be playing for the Dolphins, like one of these teams where if the starter goes down, you step into an immediate playoff contender? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me how the good backups seem to be distributed around the league. I don't really get that. So.
No, it's an interesting study, I think. But some other things that here's something I got wrong. I was offered Ladd McConkey for Zamir White, and I turned that trade down weeks ago because I kept buying into Zamir White, the Zamir White of week 16 and 17 last year, and he is not very good. He is not playing well. He can't run the ball. I think he fumbled. I mean, it's just it was a nightmare. And then here's Ladd McConkey. He's averaging over 12 for the year. He had 19 points this week, got into the end zone. So that was a miss on my part. I also, during the draft of my buddies from high school, this one guy, I always loved to give him a hard time. And so he kept Justice Hill. And I go, why are you keeping Justice Hill? Are you a moron? Like, what are you doing? And now Justice Hill has been tremendous. He had 78 receiving yards, 6 receptions, a touchdown. He's been a nice contributor. I mean, I still stand by why did you keep Justice Hill? But this Ravens offense, running the ball, the Henry and Jackson and Justice. I mean, these guys, it's remarkable. We're still waiting for Mark Andrews. We're still waiting for Isaiah Likely of week 1. That's not happening. But man, you're loving life if you've got Lamar or Henry, that's for sure.
Well, let's talk about what's going on there. Their offensive line is not very good. The Ravens offensive line is not good. And so what they're doing is they have 2 tight ends on the field, and those guys are blocking. And it turns out both Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are great blockers. And so what they're doing is they are just running the ball, and they have such a creative run scheme. Derrick Henry might break out for a 87-yard touchdown on the first play of the game. Lamar Jackson's doing this read option thing that he is so good at. And then you sneak Justice Hill into the backfield, and he rolls out and catches a 20-yard pass out of nowhere. So the Ravens offense is humming. They almost won that Chiefs game. If it wasn't for sort of an incredible and unexpected drive by the Raiders at the end of that game, the Ravens could very easily be 4-0. And I just think I don't think that the way they're running their offense is going to change for the rest of the season. And so I'm out on Mark Andrews at this point. They'll have, I think, Likely and Andrews will have a game where they score double-digit points once or twice more in this season, but I just don't think they're going to be reliable starts because of how they're running their offense, and it's working. They're rushing for 200 plus yards a game combined. I mean, it's incredible to watch what that team is doing.
If you own Mark Andrews, I think exploring trades is worthwhile. Now, I don't know how, I don't know what the market's like, but people are desperate for tight end help. So there might be an option there. Another tight end to talk about, Kyle Pitts. So we've been in on Atlanta, and I stay by it. Like, I know Bijan hasn't gotten off to a great start, and so you can criticize me for that, but CMCs might not be playing this year. Breece Hall has struggled at times. So I stand by Bijan. I think by the end of the year, he'll be all right. But with Atlanta, Kyle Pitts, 0 points. What?
Brutal.
I was watching a video earlier from Fantasy Life, and the guys were talking about how he might just be Eric Ebron or OJ Howard.
That's an interesting comp.
We're guys that, they were just talented guys. They were first-round picks, and they just never lived up to it. And that might be the case for Pitts. But I still think Atlanta, their offense hasn't gotten to the level that it can get to with Kirk Cousins. They are playing competitive football. They're winning games. Cousins has brought a level of legitimacy and stability there. And so I only think they're getting better. So I'm still on this Falcons bandwagon. I really am.
I mean, I chose Pitts as my MVP tight end in our MVP episode before the season started. I read something somewhere that right before he walked out of his office, Raheem Morris accidentally grabbed one of Arthur Smith's playbooks from last year instead of his playbook this year, because it was just the offense didn't look great this game. I think Bijan only ran the ball twice in the second half, and Algier was back out there, So I don't know, when I watch and I look at Kyle Pitts, he passes the eye test for me. But Cousins has been throwing the ball more to Darnell Mooney and even Ray McLeod than Kyle Pitts. I don't know what is going on there. Maybe he's such a freak athlete that when they line him up at receiver, compared to other tight ends, he's incredible. But compared to your typical receiver, maybe these other guys are quicker, and more agile than him. He looks good to me. And so I think that I'm still cautiously optimistic about Pitts being, a middling tight end one, but man, what a rough game to get a goose egg out of him.
I wouldn't give him away. Like if you have him, I wouldn't just give him away. So Aaron, I think Aaron and Tripp have been working on a trade off air. So
we're working on a trade. If Younghoe Koo hadn't hit that 58-yard field goal to win that game, I think we're having a totally different conversation about that offense and the way that Raheem Morris seems to be coaching it. And so did you hear him say, when somebody asked after the game, why didn't Kyle Pitts get a catch? He said, he basically said, stat guys are nerds. He said, stats are for nerds, or stats are for losers was his exact quote. Stats are for losers. That's not ever something that I want to hear out of a head coach when my guy doesn't catch the passes, because I think he's just like, we're going to double down and do whatever we got to do to win, even if that means Kyle Pitts is a blocker for us. So
yeah, well, NFL players and coaches, like you got to stop the fantasy hate and the stats hate. Like that's what's driving. That's why we're all tuning in until 11:30 last night, watching the end of that Seahawks-Lions game.
Or watching the Titans-Miami game.
Exactly.
Nobody's watching that game except for fantasy purposes.
So you can take your stats and if Bijan's not on your team, Raheem Morris, I'm not watching the Falcons. So take that for data, as they used to say, right? So what was his name? The coach of the Grizzlies? I can't think of his name. Yeah. Take that for data. Take that for data. I love that. That was great.
Stats are for losers.
Oh, that's funny. All right. So speaking of stats, actually, there's no transition. I just wanted to brag about Chase Brown. So the Panthers,
Great stats on
the
that
Panthers lost on Sunday. It was tough, and we're crazy Panthers fans. We like take the moral victory on this one because they look pretty good against Cincinnati. But watching that game, Chase Brown is a player that I started to really like since last year when he came in as a rookie toward the end of the season, coming in for Joe Mixon in Cincinnati. Joe Mixon's gone. They signed Zach Moss in the offseason. I talked a lot about it on the show. I was siding with Chase Brown. On one end, I've been wrong because Zach Moss has been the better running back this season. But if you watch, they're both good. It's a nice 1-2 punch. The Bengals offense is getting better, but I would buy in on Chase Brown. This is legit. He's good out of the backfield. If anything does happen to Zach Moss, I mean, so this week, what did he have? He had almost 26 points this week. He's still averaging 11 points per game. So he's right in the mix. And I just think the opportunity as this offense gets better and better, and the Bengals start actually winning some games as the season goes along, I like Chase Brown. So that's my big takeaway.
Eyeball test guy. When you look at him, Zach Moss is a fine running back, but you can see that Chase Brown is just more dynamic. And as my boys are Bengals fans and Paw Patrol fans, the fact that they might have two relevant chases in the future is even more exciting for us. So yeah, come on, Chase Brown, pull through, baby.
I love it. All right, let's do a quick would you rather, and we got two questions today, and we'll have some fun with this. Here we go.
That sounds good. I'll have that.
It's a good time. Do you know what I mean?
This is Would You Rather.
I'm psyched.
All right. So I told you earlier today that James Cook totally let me down with Buffalo. Breece Hall had a down game with the Jets. So the question is, would you rather have James Cook or Breece Hall the rest of the way? Two AFC East teams represented there. Who do you want?
I think I still want Breece.
Okay.
I'm going to give Breece a little bit of a pass this week because of the conditions in that game. And it's starting to look like the Broncos defense, it maybe is just a legit, like a top tier defense in the NFL. So I think I'm still leaning Breece. But man, it's just right now it's hard to predict which one of these guys is going to go off on or lay a dud on any given week. So,
well, we're still trying to figure out, okay, who are the elite running backs,
right,
like week in, week out, and is this going to change? Really, the running back and the tight end. Oh, gosh, it was 4 weeks in. We're still trying to figure it all out, but we're trying to just determine, okay, who are the workhorse backs that we can trust? And I still like James Cook, as bad as the Buffalo was.
I like him too. Yeah.
I'm in on him, and I think the Bills' offense, when it's humming, which we saw the other day, the ceiling is great, right? It's high. What is it? What's the saying? The ceiling's high.
High and great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the Bills need James Cook, maybe even more than the Jets do. So I think that the Jets need Breece Hall. I think James Cook is their best weapon outside of course, Josh Allen. All right. The second, would you rather start Jalen Hurts or Brock Purdy the rest of the way?
This is an interesting one for me because I think that Brock Purdy is just a solid, just a good NFL quarterback with a lot of good weapons around him. You know, I mean, it's starting to look like maybe McCaffrey is not coming back for a long time, but I think Purdy is good. Jalen Hurts, what always sort of insulated him against his passing options getting hurt or having a bad passing game was his rushing upside, and so much of that has gone to Saquon this year. So I still think that when A.J. Brown is back, it's going to open things up a little bit for Jalen Hurts. They're on bye this week. That's an important reminder. Byes start this week, and the Eagles are on bye. I think they've been holding Brown out to get him fully healthy, and he'll be back after the bye. So I think I still lean Hurts there. But man, if this continues for much longer, I think I might just say, you know, it's safer and simpler to have Brock Purdy as your starting quarterback than the kind of ups and downs of the Eagles right now. And I just kind of, something weird is going on with the Eagles. Something weird is going on there.
And I've got family and friends up there, and I keep getting the updates, and it's bleak. They're very concerned.
They're concerned.
So I think I got to lean Brock Purdy, and I'm not real in on the 49ers this year either. And I think there are a number of indicators that things could go awry there. Now, don't get all excited. They just beat New England. Right. Whoop-de-doo. They're one of the worst teams. So we have to keep reminding ourselves some of these teams that win. Dallas beat the Giants. Whoop-de-doo. Whoever beat the Browns this week. Whoop-de-doo. You gotta pace yourself and settle down. Who beat the Browns?
The Raiders, right?
Oh, the Raiders. Yeah, goodness gracious.
No optimism for either of those.
Please stop that. All right, let's jump on the bandwagon. What bandwagon riding on or off? Let's do it.
Get off the bandwagon.
It's time for bandwagon riding. Getting on, getting off. Make up your mind, all right?
All right. So the Steelers lost a little bit surprisingly, but the performance from Justin Fields, 300 yards passing. This guy's lighting it up. It looks like he might be the guy. So are you on the Justin Fields bandwagon?
I go back to the preseason narrative that maybe Mike Tomlin is the perfect guy to fix Justin Fields. And it seems like gradually that maybe is what is happening. So I think brighter days are ahead for Justin Fields. Maybe not 300 yards passing every week, but yeah, I think I'm on that bandwagon a little bit.
Yes. I mean, I don't think he's on the waivers anymore, but man, if he is, that's a steal. But yeah, I'm on the bandwagon. I'm on the Steelers bandwagon. Freiermuth got into the end zone. I'm a big fan of his. If he happens to be a free agent, I would definitely pick him up. So I'm still on the bandwagon. Even though the Steelers lost, I like what they've got. The running game, I'm probably avoiding right now. Cordero Patterson got injured. He's supposed to be back this week. I'm curious his role. We talked about him last week. He looked good in a short time, I think, but ended up getting hurt in that game. All right, so two other situations I want to talk about. With the Panthers and the Browns, the running back situation was interesting to navigate during drafts, and now here we are. Are these players coming back? Nick Chubb, and then our boy here in Jonathan Brooks. So Chuba Hubbard has been great for Carolina. I mean, unbelievable, back-to-back 100-yard games. Jerome Ford has been very solid as the lead guy for Cleveland this year, coming off 17.5 points this week, averaging over 14 points per game. So now, are you on the bandwagon for Chuba Hubbard and Jerome Ford, or are you jumping off now in order to get on the Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks bandwagon?
It's just so hard for me to believe that Nick Chubb is going to come back at full strength. That knee injury was brutal. And so I think that probably is going to turn into more of a timeshare and maybe even one of these kind of three-headed monsters where I'm not eager to go out and get Nick Chubb, but I think if I could trade Ford for something decent, I might try to make that move. So the Browns, I think, are going to continue to be a mess. It is a disaster there in terms of real NFL football. And so I'm not eager to hitch my wagon to anyone's star, as it were. I wanted to ask you about the Chuba Hubbard, Jonathan Brooks situation, because I'm biased by my preseason theory that they hold Brooks out until the bye because they're not good. Chuba Hubbard is playing well. He looks like a man who is playing as if a highly touted rookie was behind him on the depth chart and coming off of the IR soon, So as of this morning, they had opened the practice window for Nick Chubb on the Browns, but they said that they are not going to open it yet for Jonathan Brooks. So what do you think about Hubbard and what's going to happen there?
I think Hubbard has been so reliable and steady despite poor offensive play, poor quarterback play. But now that Dalton's out there bringing some legitimacy back there, I think Hubbard is a contributor the rest of the way, as long as he's healthy. And even if Brooks comes back, I think it's a 1-2 punch. And though they still I think Canales wants to establish the run and keep it going. And so Hubbard has to continue to be a part of that. So I don't think it's all of a sudden, you kick Hubbard to the side. No way. Brooks has the upside and he's the future. And I would even say moving forward, Hubbard's going to be a part of this team for a while. I think he's that trustworthy and has built up such goodwill in the midst of all the negativity in Carolina. They're not pushing him aside, because sometimes we see this with running backs. It's the hot hand. It's just you push, to me, Hubbard has been too reliable for that. So I would hang on to Hubbard if you can. And he's still, I think, even a flex guy the rest of the way. Now, this is the Panthers offense. It's week to week right now. We're still trying to figure it out. But that will all fall apart. But that's at the moment. That's how I feel. Now, speaking of a weird running back situation, and it's like, wait, how good is this offense? How bad is this offense? The New York Giants on Thursday night, did okay against Dallas, right? We're still seeing unbelievable performances from Neighbors. He's the real deal. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, is a hot waiver wire guy this week. He's flashed before and then lets you down the following week. I wouldn't get too excited about him. But you know who I am intrigued by? Tyrone Tracy. I love a good rookie running back, baby. I love a backup running back coming in with, a little bit of hype, but not much. Devin Singletary is not that good for the Giants. Like he's just, your veteran plodding around, maybe a burst here or there. But Tracy, I liked what I saw Thursday night. So I'm picking him up on waivers this week if I can.
It seems
you don't seem excited.
No, I'm not. I don't know what to think about the Giants offense. And it turns out that the Dallas defense might just be terrible, And so keep in mind that everything that happened was against Dallas, who was giving up a lot of points. They're just going to, Malik Neighbors is going to get 60% of the target share there. They're trying to get the ball into his hands any way that they can. It seems like they're running the ball through Wan'Dale Robinson. So where I might push back a little bit is if you're in a PPR league, I think Robinson is the perfect kind of like bye week flex position guy where he's just going to get a bunch of short passes, a little screen passes, little dink and dunk stuff. I don't know what to think about the running back room. I'm more partial to Eric Gray than Tyrone Tracy if something were to happen to Devin Singletary. But yeah, it's just I can't figure out what is going on with the Giants, and I really don't want anything to do with that offense except for Malik Neighbors.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm in a 14-team league, so I got to take some.
You got to take.
I got to roll the
dice.
Roll the dice on some running backs. So Tracy's kind of.
They're using him in an interesting way. Like he is their receiving back, and he used to be a wide receiver, so they can do more creative things with him than you can do with your average pass catching back. So not a bad pickup, especially with bye weeks coming up.
All right. So as we analyze, who did well in week 4? Who do we target on the waiver wire? We like to play a little game on this show when guys score touchdowns, when guys kind of out of nowhere contribute fantasy wise. And we just ask the question, who is that?
Who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
All right. So let's run through. We got a pretty good list this week. And the first one in Washington, I'm all in on Austin Eckler, but he was injured this week. So that gave the opportunity to Jeremy McNichols.
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
68 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Washington team. that just continues to put up huge numbers across the board. I mean, everybody's getting involved. And so good for McNichols. I think once Eckler gets back, McNichols is someone you just kind of keep an eye on. I don't think you need to add him to your team, but just keep an eye on. So that's who that is. All right, I need some help on this next name. I think Tripp says
I'm really good at this one.
All right.
Yeah. Dare Agumbawale.
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
He did it again. So he played pretty well. He had a touchdown, 47 receiving yards, 4 receptions for Houston. So Joe Mixon, don't say I told you so on Joe Mixon, but I told you so. But Agumbawale is doing all right. I still don't think you pick him up in fantasy.
His thing, the thing with him was always that he was a good pass catcher, and this was a game where for the first time they kind of needed to use a running back that way. So yeah, I agree. Maybe sort of speculative ad, but he's not in my starting lineup, and I wouldn't expect this going forward.
No. All right, let's run through some fun ones here. All right, how about Blake Whiteheart?
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
I mean, how many tight ends does Cleveland have? They stink. They have touchdowns from tight ends every single week. I feel like we've had someone a part of this game every week, but he had 3 receptions, 13 yards, and a touchdown. So,
don't you think it's the most Cleveland thing in the world for some guy with a name like that to just catch
Whiteheart.
a touchdown? You've never heard of him before. You'll never hear from him again. He's out there repping the city of Cleveland, just doing blue collar labor out there, just getting his TD in. So that's a good one.
How about in Indy, Drew Ogletree?
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
We got to get used to all these names in Indy because Joe Flacco was finding them. It was throwing with guys all over the field, but he got 1 catch, 15 yards, and a touchdown. Way to go, Ogletree. All right, let's go to Atlanta. Ooh, this will be fun to say. Olamide Zacchaeus, the wee little man.
Seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
6 catches, 85 yards. Oh, let's consider him. Consider him on the waiver wire.
So.
I mean, you still got Drake London, you still got Darnell Mooney, but Zacchaeus, we've seen his name pop up in the past. He's been in Atlanta, so he's a little bit desperate bye week, deeper teams, but he'll have these type of games every once in a while. All right, let's go to Josh Oliver.
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
Wait, where is he? Minnesota. He's got 2 catches and a touchdown. Where is Josh Oliver? He's been in.
I'm pretty sure that's the
Jacksonville,
Vikings.
But
right?
he's in Minnesota this week. They're just waiting for Hawkinson to come back because they've got Munt. They got all these different tight ends. So I think Oliver's out there. All right, last one. Last night in Seattle, we wanted the ball to go to DK Metcalf or JSN or anybody, but AJ Barner.
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
2 catches, 27 yards, and a touchdown. Aaron, did you even know who that is? No idea. No idea. We don't know who AJ Barner is. So leave him on your waivers, but good for him to score a touchdown on Monday Night Football. I'm sure his family's very excited. We don't know who he is, but his family was happy about that. All right. So last thing today, the waiver wire. Who are you going to pick up this week, Tripp? Who's at the top?
You already mentioned Dontavian Wicks. I mean, Christian Watson, high ankle sprain. It seems like the guy has been in the league for 10 years for how many leg injuries he has already accrued. And I think this is only his 3rd season. But also the Jonathan Taylor owner maybe should have already had this as a handcuff, but it's Trey Sermon is out there. You were hearing some good things about him in the preseason, and Taylor also has a high ankle injury. They're not putting him on the IR, so that might be a short-term one. But if you need a running back that you can start in a pinch during one of these bye weeks, Trey Sermon is a guy that I would pick up. Here's one I want to ask you about. Tank Bigsby is fantasy zombie. He's come back to life after we left him for dead. He looks better than Travis Etienne right now. The Jaguars have got to figure out something to try to turn things around. I mean, that's a guy that I just keep an eye on. If he's not owned, maybe you kind of stash him at the end of your bench and just see what happens with that Jaguars running game.
Yeah, I agree. No, he looks good. I mean, Jacksonville is the weirdest team this year. Christian Kirk had a great game. I'm thankful for that. He was in the starting lineup. We're still waiting for Ingram to come back. Brian Thomas Jr. is legit at times. He looks like a great rookie. And then Tank Bigsby looks like he's running with some power out there. Yeah. Some big runs. Hasn't had a ton of volume, but ETN getting off to a slow start. So yeah, Bigsby's worth picking up for sure. But I'm going all in on Wicks. I'm going all in.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not all in, 50% in. I saw that earlier today, and I go, yeah, that's probably fair.
They love him, man, and he looks like a dynamic, athletic player. So, I mean, go check and see if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on waivers in your league. Look, listen,
I'm tired of the Chiefs backfield already.
Right, it's going to be a mess in that backfield. But if this is Edwards-Helaire's last chance, and they're going to bring him off IR soon. So, or I guess it's actually the non-football injury, the NFI, whatever. I don't know all these lists, but go see if he's out there, and then don't start him. But just see how things pan out because if this is Edwards-Helaire's last chance, I mean, he was highly touted coming into the league, and he was good for his first season. This is his last chance to do something, and I believe that he's better than any of the other 3 running backs that they're rolling with right now, including Kareem Hunt. So again, just if you are desperate for running backs, and there are a lot of people who are desperate for running backs, put him on your bench and see what happens. The thing I always like to tell people at this time of the season is if you're 4-0 or you're 3-1. And these bye weeks start to hit, take advantage of other people's panic, So go look for that team who has 3 wide receivers who are all on bye on the same week, and then see if you can trade
a lopsided
for somebody
trade.
Like an AJ Brown or something like that, who that team is struggling. He was probably their first round pick. Go see if you can trade for AJ Brown for one of your decent kind of middle tier receivers, especially if you've got a team in your league that's like 1-3, 4-0. I'm not, again, we don't tell people to take advantage of their friends on this podcast, but you just play the game the way that it's meant to be played. Take advantage of people's panic and their anxiety about those bye weeks.
Yeah, the bye weeks, it changes things. It's interesting because I like to only have 1 quarterback on my roster for the most part. So now I've got 2. So I'm getting antsy about that. I'm like, I gotta keep Goff after his performance.
Right, you can't
drop Goff in the bye week. So, my big decision, we got to keep the streak alive. I've yet to mention Kamani Vidal. So everybody celebrate. I got it in there. Aaron's shaking his head. But he's on a bye week. I'm not sure he's going to survive the bye week on my team because I've got a short bench, especially in a couple leagues. It's going to be tough. So we shall see. I'm still hanging on him. Gus Edwards, forget about it. Stop activating him, Chargers. What are we doing?
Oftentimes you'll see teams start playing these rookie running backs after their bye. So, I mean, I know I'm just enabling you at this point.
I might have to hang on. I better hang on.
See what happens after the bye.
You're right. I'm hanging on. Come on, we're sticking together, buddy. We're going to ride this out. It might be to my detriment, but it's okay. It's all right. Well, good stuff today. Thanks to everybody listening. Appreciate you liking, commenting, sharing. Thanks for all your support of Fantasy Football Fellowship. Man, we're excited about all that's happening here as a ministry and the leagues that are meeting weekly and often and enjoying the fellowship and hopefully the weekly breakouts and the content. And so this week, the topic is, how's your fantasy team? But more importantly, are we asking the question, how are you doing in life? And are we listening? And are we showing each other compassion and empathy and actually caring about one another? Let's be those type of people. Let's be like Jesus. Let's care. Let's show compassion. So for Aaron, for Tripp, I'm Bryce. I'm a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your week. Week 5, here we come. Thanks so much for listening.